morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to another workflow devotion with Darrell and Arlene. I pray that you had a wonderful weekend. I pray that God is continuing to bless you in every endeavor that you put your foot or your hand or your mind towards. That blessing is still coming your way. Today is Monday. Just had such a wonderful weekend. We celebrated this past weekend the announcement of a new member coming into our family. We found out over this weekend that we're going to have another girl added to the family, and what a joy that is. Today's workflow devotion is going to be talking about an issue that we all have to deal with, every one of us, and not that issue will ever go away. It will always be a part of our walk with Christ, and that issue is resisting temptation. So we're still in the book of Corinthians, the first chapter, and in this book of Corinthians, we find out that in this particular chapter, we're in chapter 10 today, and Paul is sort of summarizing everything that he's talked about from chapter 1 all the way up through chapter 9. Paul spends a lot of his time summarizing. It's like he's building a building. He has laid out a plan for what he wants to do. He has dug out some things that should not be within the foundation. He's thrown away some things that has no business being there, and now he's getting ready to pour the concrete, if I can say it that way for those that may understand. Everything that's needed has been put within the foundation, and he's preparing, not pouring, but preparing to pour that foundation. But now he needs to summarize, he needs to go over some of the issues that came up or that he has been talking about. So he started out talking about the fact that this Corinthian church had been separating themselves in small groups. And he says that should not happen. We need to cut that out. We need to be all on one accord. Everybody needs to know what's going on. You need to be all on one accord, because the body is one body and not many bodies. It's one body with many members. There's the arms, there's the leg, the nose, the eyes. There's a lot that goes into a body, but it's still only one body, and we should all be on one accord. That's what he starts with. Then he goes on to the fact that there are some things within the body itself that is going on that should not be happening. And it was fornication, it was adultery that was happening, and the people were embracing it and taking it like, okay, well, you know what, it's a part of life, we're going to go ahead on, let's go forward, let's just move forward and keep going. They'll get it right sooner or later. And Paul says, no, that's not how you handle that. We have to sometimes just separate ourselves from those that will not go ahead on and get it together. And guess what? That was us at one point. We couldn't seem to get it together. So then the next issue that Paul starts to talk about is eating of things that were sacrificed to idols or sacrificed to devils. And he explained the fact that it's not so much that the idol food, it was corrupt, because God made it all. The food was fine, but the mental state of mind of those that were around was not. So now Paul has come all the way up to this point. That's up to chapter 9. And now Paul says, all right, I'm going to summarize all of this for you. And in this summary, Paul starts to talk about the fact that why should my freedom be based on someone else's conscience? Why should my freedom be based on someone else's conscience? Well, you know, the NBA playoffs just ended a few weeks ago. And LeBron James and his guys did an awesome job. They played their heart out. But in the midst of doing it, they had to put themselves in what was called a bubble. They called it a bubble, meaning that they surrounded themselves only with themselves. They would not allow too many people to come within that bubble, because by allowing them to come in the bubble, it would possibly destroy everything inside the bubble. So, so what they did was they made a commitment, all of them, they made a commitment that they would not bend to temptation. Now, what we don't know is if any one of them actually stuck to the commitment that was made. We don't know that. We do know that they made it to the other side. We do know that no one within the bubble ended up with the virus, the coronavirus. We know those things, but we don't know is that if someone actually went outside the bubble and did not tell anyone else about it. You know, these are the types of things that were happening even back with Moses. Moses took the children of Israel out of Egypt, and as he took them out of Egypt, they too had their own little bubble. And God separated them from everybody else, because he wanted them to be separate. He wanted them to be his people. But then when, after they had been separated, after they had been delivered, after they had been put in a bubble that could protect them from the viruses that were going on around them, they murmured. They complained. They didn't want to be in the bubble. They wanted to be like the rest of the world. Matter of fact, some of them even wanted to go back to Egypt. Some of them even wanted to go back and be bound and not have that freedom. And if you know the story, if you don't, go back into Genesis and read it. Now, God is displeased with them because of what they did. And Paul is talking about that now. Paul talks about the fact that even the Israelites that were freed still had to suffer some things. They suffered because they murmured. Snakes came into the camp. And you know, sometimes we don't realize it, maybe we don't pay attention to it, but those serpents that were in the camp, they were in the church. They were part of it. Wasn't that they were supposed to be there, but because of the temptations that were made by the people, because their mindsets were still back in Egypt, all of a sudden God allowed these serpents, these evil things, to come into the camp to be a part of the body only because of what they did, because they would not do what was supposed to be done themselves. So Paul starts out with, in this chapter 10, and he says, I don't want you to be ignorant. Don't want you to be ignorant. All of the ones that were delivered, all of the ones that were placed in this bubble, all of them came and were baptized through the lake. All of them. They all came through together. All of them seeing the glory of what God was able to do. But not all of them resisted the temptations of Egypt. Some of them wanted to go back in their mind. They wanted freedom, but they wanted to be free and still sin at the same time. And Paul says some of them even committed fornication. Some of them committed adultery right there in the camp. And it should not be so. So now Paul starts to summarize all of this and says, this is not how we should live as brothers and sisters in Christ, as leaders in the communities, as people of who we are, we should not be this way. But yet we find ourselves doing things that we have no business doing because we give into the temptations of life. Now, Paul says the temptations that you have, God never puts a temptation on you without giving you a way to get out of that temptation. And every man's temptation is different, man and woman. We all have different temptations, but we all have a way out if we choose to take that way out. But Paul, now near the end of chapter 10, he says, I've got a question. And my question is, why is my freedom so bound on someone else's conscience? Why is it that I have to be so careful about what I do because of what someone else may think about what I do? If meat is going to, if the meat has been prayed over, if the meat has been sacrificed to something else, but in my conscience, I already know that God made it and there's nothing wrong with it, why should I have to pay the cost because of someone else's shortcomings, someone else's conscience? Well, it's because we represent Jesus Christ. We are earthly representations of the body of Christ. And because of that, we hold responsibilities that must be continued. We must uphold those responsibilities. We must be advocates of Jesus Christ 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So though we are free and we have that freedom to do a lot of things, Paul says, though I am free, I still have to take into consideration that I am still a child of God. And I cannot use my freedom and then just do whatever I feel like I want to do, where some others may actually look at what I'm doing and may end up going and being messed up in their mind or going in another direction because of my liberty, my freedom, and I'm now allowing them to see things that I do and they not understand it. This is a great chapter. It's a great chapter. I would really recommend that you dive into it, learn about what Paul is talking about. We are free because Jesus said, if he makes you free, we are free indeed. No, but even with that freedom comes responsibility. So when you're going and you're up against a trouble and it meets you face to face, you have to really think about how I'm going to handle what's coming my way, what trouble comes in front of me. I must face it. But at the same time as I face those troubles, as I face those temptations, I must know and understand that the advocate that I have, the Spirit of God that is within me, will allow me to overcome those temptations. All I have to do is keep my mind stayed on Jesus. If my mind is stayed on Jesus, regardless of what's going on around me, then I can make it. I can make it through those temptations. Every temptation is different because all of us are different. No matter what your temptation is, if you just keep your mind on Jesus Christ, if you stay within the body of Christ and continue to study, continue to transfer your mind, then you too will be able to handle the temptations of life. And as Paul said, don't be ignorant. Don't think that just because you're part of the body that you too can't fall short, because we've all fallen short. We've all fallen short of the goodness and the glory of God, but God is the one that holds us up. Well, this has been another Workflow Devotion with Darrell and Arlene. I pray that the temptations of life that you have to experience, the temptations of life that that can cause issues within your own life, that you too are able to understand the freedom that God has given you, but the responsibility that you have, even to your own temptations. Well, until Wednesday, we will see you then. But on Wednesday, we will be in chapter 11 of this great letter, this great book of 1 Corinthians, as Paul continues to teach and to direct and to lay this foundation as he's getting ready to pour this nice, hard, concrete foundation that we continue to build on even today. Well, may God bless you. May heaven continue to smile on you. And until Wednesday, we will see you then. This is another Workflow Devotion with Darrell and Arlene. God bless you. See you on Wednesday. Bye.